What is going on, guys? Well, we are just over the halfway hump for 2023, and I gotta be honest, so far it's been kind of a lackluster year for horror. We've had some good ones, we've had a couple, but we've had a lot of mediocre and a couple extremely bad so far.
What the fuck is this piece of shit?
With the last 5 to 6 months of the year left, I looked ahead at what horror films are coming out that we can look forward to. And so I'm going to tell you about 10 movies that are yet to come out in 2023, and I'm also going to rank them by my interest and excitement. Now, obviously, there's going to be some more horror films than just 10 for the rest of the year, but oftentimes, especially with horror, there's some that pop up out of nowhere, that get advertised out of nowhere, that get buzz and hype out of nowhere. We still got some film festivals like Fantastic Fest coming up where I'm sure there's going to be some surprises in there. These are just movies that I am well aware of, that I have seen marketing for, and for sure are coming out in this calendar year. And while you're searching online for all the upcoming horror films to look forward to, make sure that you are surfing in safety by using the sponsor of today's video, Aura. As time goes on and technology advances, bigger and more important pieces of our lives are tied to social media profiles and online accounts, leaving us open wide for the threat of identity theft more than ever before. In fact, identity theft is the fastest growing crime in this country, with a new victim nearly every 14 seconds. And that's why I'm excited to partner today with Aura, which is an easy to use app that has every single tool that you will need to stay safe online. Identity theft protection, fraud monitoring, VPN, password management, even antivirus software. And while I'm sure most of you guys watching probably have one or even a few of these things, if you don't have every single one of them in your arsenal, it's like locking your doors at night but leaving your windows wide open. And let's call it like it is. It's easier and much more appealing to have all of these different services under one app and one bill. The day that I activated my Aura account, I got over 50 notifications of my email address showing up on the dark web. That's a little corner of the internet where hackers buy, trade, and sell your personal information. And by using Aura, you can even get near real-time credit inquiry reports, whether somebody is trying to open a credit card or a personal loan using your information. So let Aura do the heavy lifting to keep you safe online by using my exclusive link and getting 14-day free trial. And you'll be shocked at how much of your personal information they protect in just those 14 days. So go to aura.com/Cody Leach or use this QR code to start your trial of Aura today. And thank you to Aura for partnering with me on today's sponsorship. Coming in at number 10 in not only the least interesting and the least exciting movie of these 10, but probably the least exciting of any horror films that are yet to be announced for the year 2023, and that is The Nun 2. I thought the first Nun sucked. It's gone on to be probably my least favorite of that entire Conjuring universe. To be honest with you, most of the spin-offs, with the exception of maybe Annabelle Creation, I don't find to be all that good and have kind of tainted the quality of the name The Conjuring for me. And the fact that they decided to do a sequel to The Nun when most people agreed that movie was pretty terrible surprised me. But I gave hope that maybe they would learn their lessons from their previous failed effort, in my opinion, and do something a little bit better. And I have now seen the trailer for The Nun at least 3 different times in theaters, and this trailer just makes it look like the same exact thing. It's just setups for cheap, generic jump scares. And look, The Nun, the character of Valak, is certainly cool and iconic and one of the more terrifying parts of The Conjuring 2, but this character has not sustained any side projects, or certainly not a franchise for me. There's just not enough there. There's not enough meat on the bones. And sticking with the same character of Thaisa Farmiga from the first film and just catching up with her a few years later, what's she doing? Oh, she's still battling this nun bitch. It's not exciting to me at all. Coming in at number 9, the franchise that just does not know how to stay dead. That is Saw X, or Saw 10, or whatever the hell they end up verbally calling this film. Look, it's no secret because I've reviewed every single one of these films. I have ranked them, and I've talked about them multiple times. I'm not a big fan of this franchise. There's a couple good movies here. Saw 2 was always my favorite, but the most of this franchise for me is just redundant and recycled ideas, and after they killed off the character of John Kramer, it was very obvious that they just had no idea how to continue this franchise in an organic way, and so it just got more and more convoluted and ridiculous, and there was always a backup plan for a backup plan for a backup plan, and there was like 95 different apprentices that all had the drop on each other in case one of them went rogue, and it's just stupid to me. And this is going to be the third attempt at a reboot in a row. We had Jigsaw that I was very excited for because of the directors absolutely let me down. We had Spiral just a couple years ago, which I actually thought was pretty good, but certainly had its share of issues, and it seemed that audiences just weren't interested in that take on this franchise, and it's not going to be continuing. And now we're just going back to the most obvious well of bringing back John Kramer, bringing back Tobin Bell, and they're also bringing back the apprentice from the first three films and Amanda as well. And so obviously it's going to be a prequel of some kind, and it's just like, why? What story is there left to tell? What is there left to do with these characters? Now, again, they might surprise me. Maybe I'll walk out of this film and I say, hey, that was actually pretty fucking clever. That's one of the best ones we've seen so far. Maybe, and I hope for that. But on its surface level, without having seen a trailer or a plot synopsis, this doesn't excite me at all, and I just roll my eyes. Coming in at number 8 is going to be The Exorcist Believer, the kickoff film to the new Reboot trilogy helmed by David Gordon Green, who recently gave us the Reboot trilogy of Halloween films that started off with a lot of promise and just descended into absolute mania for that franchise to argue about for the next 20 years. Look, The Exorcist is a proven classic. I've never been as big a fan of it as most people. I actually prefer The Exorcist 3, but undeniably, the first film is iconic, and it's a genius film that has stood the test of time. And it's one of those movies that I have always said should have never been a franchise. As much as I love The Exorcist 3, it has very little to do with The Exorcist, and you could tell that that movie was supposed to be something else, and they kind of forced it to be an Exorcist sequel. But every other film in this franchise, Exorcist 2, one of the worst movies I've ever seen in my life. The two different versions of the Exorcist prequel, not very good. And the fact that they're doing this completely played out direction at this point where it's like, we're just going to delete everything and go back to the classic original and continue from there, that doesn't excite me. We're getting the returning character of the mother, which is like, okay, cool. It's a name you can put on the poster to maybe excite some of the hardcore horror nerds. But beyond that, what is the point of her character coming back? And what fucking story do you have to tell that now spans 3 more movies? Biting off way more than you can chew, like putting the cart right in front of the horse, in my opinion. Again, I withhold the right to change my opinion on any of these movies after I have seen them. But the concept of a legacy sequel to a film that I never understood having sequels in the first place and trying to market it off of the name of the guy that delivered one pretty good Halloween film, one extremely mediocre Halloween film, and one wildly confusing Halloween film as far as the direction that they chose, that doesn't excite me either. Coming in at number 7 is kind of one that it doesn't really offend me. I'm not worried about it, but I'm not excited either. So it's just kind of in this I don't care spot of number 7, and that's A Haunting in Venice. So this is the Hercule Poirot. I'm probably fucking up that name horrifically, but this is the Kenneth Branagh franchise where he is the, I believe, French inspector, the guy with the big mustache. We had the Murder on the Orient Express, and then the one that came out a couple years ago. Neither one of them have been received all that well. I have not had the motivation to watch either one of them, and I just never heard anything more than it's okay. So the fact that they keep making more is a little surprising, but this one is actually going into the horror subgenre here with a haunted house. And so it's going to have a murder mystery element, but it's also going to have some supernatural elements to it. And that kind of intrigues me. It intrigues me enough to maybe convince me to watch the previous 2 films. But again, this is a franchise that I've just never really heard anything but shoulder shrugs for. So we'll see. Coming in at number 6 is The Strangers Reboot. Now, to be clear, this has not been officially confirmed for 2023 release date, but it is expected to be released this year. So for those that don't know, I believe 2 movies are going to be created by Rennie Harlin to reboot the Strangers franchise. And the Rennie Harlin name is why I'm interested in this, because I am one of those few people that do not like the original Strangers at all. I genuinely think that that's a terrible movie. There's some creepy moments. There is some iconic imagery in it. There is certainly some pieces of that movie that I get the appeal, but the overall package, I've never liked as many times as I've tried to watch it. The Strangers Prey at Night was decent, but another movie that was just wildly overhyped by certain people whenever it first was released. It's good. I prefer it to the original, but just an okay throwback slasher film. But Rennie Harlin's got a wild style. This guy's got like a balls to the wall type approach to his movies. And some of my favorite movies of all time have been created by Rennie Harlin. You have Nightmare on Elm Street 4. That's Rennie Harlin. You got Cliffhanger. One of my favorite action films of all time, The Long Kiss Goodnight, is a Rennie Harlin film. So I'm curious what he's going to bring to this. And I do think that these characters are cool enough just from a visual standpoint that it'd be very easy to create a movie that I really enjoy more than the previous two. So I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. I don't know anything else about the approach, what they're doing to reboot it, what they're doing to make it different. It's just the Rennie Harlin name that has me a little curious. Wardrobe change. So leave it to the movie news machine to come out with an announced horror film this October that I knew nothing about after I have already recorded and edited this video. So we're just going to splice this in here. There's no numbers. I'm not changing all that. You can fucking count wherever this lands. That's where it lands in the list as far as my interest. But you have Pet Cemetery Bloodlines. Now, I had heard that they were going to be doing more Pet Cemetery movies not too long after they had the remake a few years ago. I didn't know what level of production was already done on one, and apparently one's already done and ready to go. So Paramount Plus exclusive movie coming out October 6th or 7th, I believe. October 6th. And so this is going to be like an origin story type prequel to Pet Cemetery. It's very unclear in the articles that I have read whether or not it's just a prequel to the story in general, or if it's going to have direct ties to the most recent Pet Cemetery or the 1990 Pet Cemetery. I would lean on expecting it to probably attach to the most recent one. And, you know, as far as my interest in this one, it's really only dulled because of how disappointed I was in that Pet Sematary remake. There was so much in line for that to be such a good remake. A great cast, really good directors that proved themselves on previous material, that I was intrigued to see what they were going to do with it. And this was one of the biggest examples of just fucked marketing, just modern movie marketing that appeals to the lowest common moron that has to have the entire plot laid out for the, oh my God, now I know everything that's going to happen in the movie. I think I'll go see it. And while I'm there, I'll probably pull out my cell phone because movies are just background noise for me. Fuck you. What was I talking about? Oh, Pet Cemetery Bloodlines. So you have the big twist in that remake that they decided for whatever stupid ass reason to give away in the trailers and to put forefront in the posters, eliminating any shock. And there would have been genuine shock from those of us that are very familiar with the source material or the previous movie. And so, you know, that was the least of that movie's problems, but it was one of the biggest issues with it. And this one, I don't know. You guys that have been following me for a while, you know how I feel about prequels. Most of them I'm not really a big fan of because they typically answer questions that I wasn't asking and give me answers to those questions that I don't really like too much. There's always a little bit of predictability involved with them because you already know, with it being a prequel, where the story is going to end to a certain degree. Sometimes 100% you know where it's going to end up. And so this is going back, and you have a young Judd. I don't know if he's going to be the main character or not. I mean, interesting cast, I'll give it that, which is what raises my interest a little bit more. You've got Henry Thomas here, who we all know from E.T. and recent works on Netflix shows like The Haunting of Hill House. You got Pam Grier, David Duchovny, like really interesting, weird cast that I'm kind of curious about. And the plot synopsis is kind of generic. It just says that a young Judd Crandall in 1969 who has dreams of leaving his hometown behind, but soon discovers sinister secrets buried within and is forced to confront a dark family history that will forever keep him connected to the town. Banding together, Judd and his childhood friends must fight an ancient evil that has gripped Ludlow since its founding and once unearthed has the power to destroy everything in its path. Spoiler alert, they fucking fail because Judd Crandall sticks around in the town for the shit to still happen years later. That doesn't really tell me enough. I mean, is this going to be about the Wendigo? Are we going to get more of a Wendigo focus here that we never really got in the previous two? Is it going to be about the story that we got about the father who buried his son that lost his life at war, and he comes back and he's all zombified, and you know the town burns the house with the dad and the undead son inside? Like, I don't really know what they're going to be exploring, but any of those options to me is predictable. So this could be cool. I love the original Pet Sematary movie. Like, despite some of its very dated aspects, to me, that's still what I would call the scariest movie ever made. Just the concept is terrifying to me, especially after you become a parent. So inherently, it's hard for me to not be interested at all in this. I just don't think they're doing enough work to convince me that it's something worth making yet. Coming in at number 5 is a movie called Cobweb that's actually going to be released in, I don't know, like a week or so, maybe later on this week. And it is a film that is produced by Evan Goldberg and Seth Rogen. And that's what has me curious about it, because to my knowledge, they haven't produced a horror film yet. Now, you can have your opinion on Seth Rogen as a person and as a comedian. Some people love him, some people hate him for understandable reasons. But as producers, that team has been pretty damn solid. A lot of the things that they have put their hands and their name on have turned out to be pretty good. And if nothing else, they've been interesting to check out. So that's what has me a little curious about this. Other than that, the premise of it is somewhat reminiscent of other movies that we've seen. It's about a kid that starts to have like these surreal nightmares about like his mom being possessed. You've got Lizzie Kaplan here, I believe, playing the mom, and I really like her. You've got Anthony Starr here as well, maybe presumably playing the dad, I'm not sure, but Homelander, and I know him more from Banshee, which is a kick-ass show that you should check out, excuse me. But those names is what interests me in this. Like, the premise in and of itself sounds like 17 other movies I've seen before in the last 5 years. But those names make me think that this is going to be something interesting or unique that hopefully will take that somewhat redundant premise and do something really creative with it. Coming in at number 4 is going to be Salem's Lot. And this is another movie that has not been officially slated for release in 2023. It was delayed pretty heavily, and they have yet to put a for sure release date on it. So we might get it this year. That's when it's expected to be released, but then again, we might not. But what has me interested in this is that I love vampire stuff. I love Stephen King stories, but I have never been able to get into the original miniseries with the guy from Starsky and Hutch, David Soul, excuse me. So it's just really long, and it's really slow, and it's really dated. And aside from that one sequence where the kid is floating outside of the window that's really iconic and creepy, there wasn't really a whole lot stand out about it. I just think I saw it way too late in life. I watched that the night of the voting started. The polls started to come in when it was Trump versus Hillary. So while everybody else was losing their minds over who was going to be president of the United States a few years ago, I was watching Salem's Lot. It's pretty hilarious. But yeah, so it's a premise and a subgenre that I really want to see something cool and awesome and horrific in. And this has the potential to be that, if we get to see it this year. Coming in at number 3 is going to be Five Nights at Freddy's, which is coming out October 27th, the same night as Saw X, believe it or not. Why they would pit 2 horror films against each other on Halloween, I don't know. I really don't know. Maybe it'll work out for the best. To me, that seems like a little foolish. But nonetheless, Five Nights at Freddy's, significantly more appealing of a concept than the 10th Saw film for me. So if I had the choice to see one, I would see this one. Now, I've never played the games. I know enough about it. I've seen little clips and screenshots. I get the gist of what they're going for. But the trailer seemed fun. You know, we had Willy's Wonderland a year or two ago that was trying to kind of riff on this with Nicolas Cage. I was really disappointed in that one. Just didn't work for me at all. So I'm hoping that this one will work for me. I like Josh Hutcherson. Haven't seen him in a while. Of course, you've got Stu himself and Matthew Lillard here, which excites me even more. And there's potential that this movie could be silly fun. There's a potential that this could be one of those horror films, kind of like Killer Clowns from Outer Space or something, that is creepy, but it's campy enough to where you could kind of like use it as a gateway drug for some of your kids. Like, hey, let's watch this little Five Nights at Freddy's movies. You'll be creeped out, but you'll have fun with it. That's what I'm hoping it's going to be. So we'll find out. Again, I'm walking into it with no expectations from what they need to deliver from the video games. So I think that primes me to be in a position where I could probably be entertained by this more so than the pre-established fans. Hopefully. Coming in at number 2 is going to be Thanksgiving. Directed by Eli Roth. Eli Roth's Thanksgiving. That's going to be released November 17th, just before Thanksgiving. So this is a movie that was one of those Grindhouse trailers in the Grindhouse film from the early 2000s where you had Quentin Tarantino and you had Robert Rodriguez team up. One of them did Planet Terror, the other one did Death Proof, and in between the film and before it, they had like these Grindhouse mock trailers, and you had like Machete, which eventually became a couple of movies. And Thanksgiving was one that most horror fans were really intrigued by. You know, Eli Roth was a pretty big up-and-coming name at the time with Cabin Fever and Hostel. And since then, he's gone on to do the Death Wish remake that most people hated. I actually loved. And I think he's even the one who's doing that movie based off of Borderlands that's just sitting in development hell right now. So it's a shame about that one. But Thanksgiving actually intrigues me quite a bit because there's not really any Thanksgiving horror films that I know and love. I'm sure there's a lot of really low-rent B-movie versions out there, but there's not really any that stand out. And there's a lot of other holiday horror films that I love that I watch during those times. Don't have one for Thanksgiving. And Eli Roth is one of those guys that has so much potential, just like Rob Zombie. He has potential to deliver something that I love, but there's certain elements about what they do that always gets in their way. And Eli Roth's being his very strange sense of humor and some of his stylistic approach to me, to where he can deliver some really visceral gore. He can deliver some pretty tense sequences. He can shoot a film really well, but some of his writing, just like with Rob Zombie, just always kind of holds it back from being a movie I completely love. And so if this is a movie that totally embraces that really like B, almost C movie grindhouse appeal to it, I think his writing might actually lend itself to that really well. And it's supposed to come out this year. It's shot already, so I don't see any reason why it won't. And it might end up being a really nice surprise, especially if, God forbid, October movies end up disappointing us quite a bit. If Saw X and Five Nights at Freddy's really don't deliver for audiences, it would be cool to see Eli Roth come in November and deliver that Halloween experience for Thanksgiving. But coming in at number 1 is going to be a movie that I don't have to wait too long to see. I think it comes out in 2 weeks, and that is Talk to Me. Now, this is going purely off of pre-established hype. There was a lot of people that got to check this out at Sundance, I believe, and most people came out raving about it. They also did one of those like Regal mystery movies a couple of weeks ago. Unfortunately, it was the night that I saw Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning, that I didn't get a chance to check it out, but even those people came out raving about it, saying that this is like on a Hereditary level of a shot in the arm for genuine, tension-filled, scary horror. And the fact that it's a movie directed by a couple of YouTubers has me really interested. I don't know these guys. I've never seen their channel, but it's a channel called Raka Raka, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. A couple of guys from Australia that they do like these horror live streams and horror shorts and things like that. And this is them bringing their talents to the big screen. And the concept is basically where you have people sitting around with like a severed hand and I don't know, like a monkey's paw type situation, it sounds like. And that's all I want to know about it. It's a movie that I'm not going to watch the trailers. I'm not going to read much beyond that little plot synopsis there. I'm not going to look at any of the marketing nor none of the reviews. This is the type of movie that I like to walk into as blind as possible. And I try to do that more times than not with horror nowadays if I can stand it. And if the hype is real, if the hype isn't hyperbolic, if the hype isn't one of those things that people are just trying to get their name shared by the studios and the official Twitter accounts, then this could be the horror film that finally gives me what I have been missing so far in 2023. And we will find out very soon because this movie comes out in a week and a half, and so I'll get to the bottom of all your bullshit, all you early hypers, and see if this is actually worth it. So yes, number 1 for me of the films that I know about remaining to come out in 2023 is Talk to Me. Well, that's it for this one, guys. If you enjoyed that, please click over here for my 2023 new release reviews. I'm also going to put my review of Evil Dead Rise up here, probably the biggest horror film to be released so far this year. Be sure to check out Aura down in the video description below and start that free trial. And as always, like, share, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss everything from this channel in the future. And remember, opinions are like assholes, but that doesn't mean you have to be.